Hi guys. So I want to talk about the international rules-based order. You might have heard some politicians say this. They use this term to describe basically the Western power sphere, but it also has some Eastern countries in it like Japan and Korea. And I think they used to call it, or they wanted to call it, the New World Order, but that got such a negative stigma after a while with all the conspiracy stuff that I think they had to abandon that. And you don't hear that at all, but politicians did used to say that, some of them. But they abandoned it and they've chosen the term the rules-based order, international rules-based order. Let's just have a look at Anthony Blinken here, the Secretary of State for America.
We're not seeking to contain China. We're not seeking to hold China back. We are seeking, resolutely so, to uphold the rules-based international order.
Right, the rules-based international order, which is basically the liberal Jewish world order. The Western countries are all extremely liberal. Jewish people have a lot of influence, but they share that influence with liberal people who have a similar ideology. And as you can see here, Seoul from South Korea has been sucked into the American vortex. And down here, Lloyd Austin made a visit and he made a statement. Lloyd Austin is the Defense Secretary for America, and he's black, so he's probably liberal. And he says, where's it gone? I just lost it. Yeah. He says, however, as Biden has stated, our common problems can only be solved when countries that share the universal values of liberal democracy and human rights join forces. So they're willing to work with Korea and Japan as long as they're liberal and as long as they help them combat these other countries in the world that are the bad guys because they're not liberal and they're not Jewish. So mainly you have Russia, which is not very liberal and has some Jewish influence, but nothing like in America. Sorry. It's my wife. I don't want to edit this video. I don't want to learn how to do that yet. Just making a video. So yeah, you have the bad guys, Russia, not very liberal, not very Jewish. North Korea, not very liberal, definitely not Jewish. And China. And these three countries, well, they're all nuclear powers, so that's why they're a worry. And obviously Russia and China are very, very big, especially China. So they're especially worried about those two. So, I just want to say that he says,
we're not seeking to contain China.
We're not seeking to contain China. We're not seeking to hold China back. Obviously, this is just a straight up lie. You can see here, the first island chain refers to the first chain from the East Asian coast. It's an island chain strategy in the US foreign policy. They roughly surround the territorial waters of China, and this first island chain, first line of defense against China, is meant to contain China. And this is from like I think it's from decades ago, but they've been building up towards this, and now they have bases. You can see US military bases, lots in South Korea, Japan, all these Japanese islands. The Philippines, they have a lot in the Philippines, especially lately. Where is this? US secures deal in Philippines. That's the Austin Lloyd, the Defense Secretary. They're working closely with the Philippines now, and they're also working with. Let me get another map here. I think I have another map. Maybe I don't. They're also working with. Let's just do US bases around China. They're working with the Philippines, and they're also working with Taiwan. Now they have troops in Taiwan. There are American troops in Taiwan right now, and they're working closely with Australia. They've got quite a few bases in Australia now, and they're building another in the north, and they've given Australia submarines. So you can see they're getting worried about China. They're building this defense, this first line defense against China. And it's all around Taiwan. I'll get to that later. But I want to say that they're worried about Russia as well, and they've pushed Russia towards China with all the stuff going on with Ukraine. They've pushed Russia towards China. So NATO and America and the international rules-based order, they wanted a war with Russia. They wanted to destabilize Russia. They wanted to hurt their economy, hurt their military. It's not really working, but that's what they wanted to do. You can see here Merkel admits they were just buying time to train Ukraine's army. You can see here, have a read of this. You can pause and have a read of this if you want. William Burns, back in 2008, this is a WikiLeaks leak, where before he was the CIA, he's now the current CIA director, but before he was working in some other capacity, and he said that, this is a memo saying that NATO, Ukraine membership into NATO is a red line for Russia, and if that happens, then they will probably invade. So they knew, and they got what they wanted. And Putin, he was actually quite pro-Western. He wanted to be friends with the West, and for a long time, he didn't understand why it was so difficult to be friends with the West. And I think he still doesn't fully understand. He says here, I was naive about the West. He thought that there was just an inertia of thinking that they were just always against the Soviet Union because they used to be communist, and they just were slow to change this thinking. But it wasn't that. It was just because his country is not part of the liberal Jewish alliance, the rules-based order. They're not liberal and they're not Jewish, and they're dangerous. They're a big, dangerous country with nukes. So that's the reason. Russia maybe could have been a friend with the West if the CIA was able to plant someone else as president instead of Putin, who was much more friendly to Jewish people. But they didn't, so Russia is a problem. And I'm not sure how much Putin really understands that, even still. But anyway. And so, not only did they push Putin towards China, but also these other countries. So now they're basically allied with North Korea. And North Korea and Russia both realized that they had to be serious about things and just abandon their attempts to be friends with the West and just group up. You know, they got to look after each other because the West hates them. And they realize that. And Putin also went to Vietnam, and if Putin can somehow get China and Vietnam to be more friendly, because those two used to really, really hate each other, then that's really not looking good for the West. You have Malaysia. Malaysia wants to join BRICS now. You have Turkey, who's stopped some trade with Israel. You've got the Yemen guys, obviously supporting Gaza. Argentina, they wanted to join BRICS. They were going to join BRICS, but Javier Milei got in, and apparently there was a bit of American CIA messing around there. And he got in, and they abandoned BRICS. They're not joining BRICS anymore. And Javier Milei he got close, and then they had another election, and then he won. And he was just all over the media there, all over the media. And so you can see that the media, even in Argentina, is just as tightly controlled and dominated by liberals as the West is. And they're very good at what they do, and it's a well-oiled machine. And they got him in. So you can see Putin here with Kim Jong-il. Or Kim Jong-un, I forget which one it is. It's Un, isn't it? So I want to go to this. Let's go to this one. There's been this picture floating around on 4chan for since February 2023 now. So a year and a half. And you can pause it and read it if you want, but it talks about, if you're not watching this video, it talks about how the liberal Jewish alliance, or the elites, or the deep state, or the globalists, or whatever you want to call them, they're starting to roll back some of this woke stuff because conservatives are not joining the military, basically. That's a problem because liberals don't join the military. Liberals, they're not fighters, right? Military is like 80% conservative or something. And numbers, recruits are down, way down in America, and they have been for years, and they're down in Australia, and they're down in France, and they're down in England. So it's a problem. It's a problem because recruiting numbers are down, and China is coming up, and Russia is coming up. Big problem. So if they don't want to get crushed by China, which they don't, then they need to do something about this, and they are doing something about it. They've got a plan. This is the plan, and they've given the memo to everyone to roll back on some woke stuff. I'm not going to comment about Rogan and Musk here. I don't really know about them, but a lot of the rollback that we're seeing is not genuine or organic. They have a plan. So I said before this Trump-Biden debate, I said to a friend that I'm 98% sure Trump will win. And now after the debate, now I'm 99.9% sure. So he's here with Dr. Phil, big mainstream interview, and
with one caveat, we'll let you out, but you go to the United States.
I believe every country is doing it.
Yeah. And it's,
by the way, if you were the head of a country, they say, and the danger they save.
And look at this map. That I did a show about this. The red is where Chinese government has funded buying major farmland.
Yeah.
And then superimposed on that are some of our most strategic military bases. Yeah. And you can see there's Dugway Proving Ground. That's military equipment, biological, chemical weapons.
So Dr. Phil, he's talking about China. Dr. Phil, he's been told to say this, right? I mean, he gets advice about what he should interview Trump about. And so he's told to say this, told to bring this up. He doesn't know anything, obviously, himself. So it started to become clear that they were going to use Trump to combat this waning nationalism, to re-energize and re-motivate conservatives. This is another one. Chuck Schumer, this extremely Jewish, extremely liberal guy. He put this on Twitter about how he's grilling on his barbecue, this all-American pastime. He's just like the boys, and he deleted this later because people were mocking him about the hamburgers. He's already got the cheese on the hamburgers before he's flipped them, and the hamburgers are brown, and the hot dogs are cooked 30 minutes before this, and he just deleted it because people thought it was just obviously a PR stunt. And Trump is $1.57, so he's heavy favorite. He was $1.66 before the debate. Dropped down a bit. Realistically, he should be $1.05 or something. Heavy favorite. This is an article in Substack by Eric Stryker. He says, the taboo against being seen associated with Trump has suddenly been shattered. The media suddenly doesn't think Trump is the worst thing in the world, basically. The taboo against him has been broken. He also talks about how his next cabinet is almost certainly going to be full of war hawks who want war with Iran or China or Russia. But I'm not going to go down and read that. So Trump's going to get in because, one, the Democrats are demoralized because their guy Biden doesn't have their back with Palestine. They had these huge protests and they just got completely shut down, and they're probably confused and they don't know what's going on because usually they just get away with anything they want. Usually the media's on their side. Usually the police don't do jack. And all of a sudden they got treated like conservatives, and they don't know what's going on. They're demoralized. They can't vote for Biden because he doesn't do anything. They don't want to vote for Trump. They're probably going to vote in less numbers. So that was the first reason Trump's going to win. Second reason is conservatives are more wary about election rigging now, so it's a bit harder to get away with it. The third reason is that Trump supports Israel heavily. And the fourth reason is that for this strategy, which is now very apparent, where they want the woke reversal strategy, where they want to encourage conservatives to join the army and fight for America. Now, let me see. So, let's play this.
Anyone else getting that feeling? Feels like the white pills are starting to rain down. Feels like we're back.
So I am going to stand in this election.
So
I'll be launching
anyway, the conservatives are starting to think they're back. Not that Paul Joseph Watson is in on it, right? I'm not saying that. There's this remoralization of conservatives. Have a look at this question.
Is he going to sign that bill? I'll veto it. He'll sign it.
Thank you.
Let's turn now to the issue of immigration and border security. President Biden, a record number of migrants have illegally crossed the southern border on your watch. Overwhelming border states and overburdening cities such as New York and Chicago, and in some cases causing real safety and security concerns. Given that, why should voters trust you to solve this crisis?
This is just such a reversal. This guy's Jewish, Jake Tapper. He works for CNN. He's extremely liberal. He's a massive Biden supporter. And he's just digging into Biden with these ruthless questions. Why should they trust you? You're overwhelming the border states with migrants. He would have never asked stuff like this before. He asked him about inflation, and he gave an example, say groceries now cost $120 instead of $100. He asked him about his age. Are you too old? It was just, not that it's not fair, it is fair, but it's such a 180 for the media, what they did before. Have a look at this.
They don't really care. Start your tape right now, because I'm about to tell you the truth. And F you if you can't handle the truth. This version of Biden, intellectually, analytically, is the best Biden ever. Not a close second. And I've known him for years. The Brzezinskis have known him for 50 years. If it weren't the truth, I wouldn't say it. And you read the news.
Yeah, he just tells the truth. That's all this guy does. And this was only, I think, only like 6 months ago or less. And this was the media before, where Biden is amazing. He's the best version ever. He's not too old. He's just excellent. Blah blah blah. Or at least they ignored how sort of senile he was getting for like 4 years. And now they're just complete 180. We are fucked. Democrats despair over Biden performance. Look, this is CNN today. Biden acknowledges weak debate performance. Everyone is deflated. I know I'm not a young man. They're just they want Biden out. They want Trump in, and it's not because they suddenly think Trump is a better president, or they suddenly like Trump. It's because of this strategy. It's not genuine at all. It's completely inorganic. How do you go from the best Biden ever to just awful and terrible in a couple of months? You know, if they said, I mean, you know already, like, it's just not genuine. They're telling the truth now, but that's because they have a plan. Assange getting out is really good news. I'm super happy for him. That was such good news. But is that part of it? I don't know. Maybe there was just too much pressure, international community pressure, or maybe if they want conservatives to join the military, if they want conservatives to believe in America, to trust the government, how can they trust the government if Assange is still in prison? If he's been locked up for 12 years and he's still there, they can just say, well, if you really mean what you say, then let Assange go. Simple as that. So that, if he was still in jail, that could be a spanner in the works. That could hurt their plan. Do they have to let him go because of pressure? I didn't see that the pressure was getting particularly too large. You know, I mean, I don't know. Maybe it was. Who knows? The European elections. Macron in France called a snap election, and he's going to get destroyed, and the Conservative Party is going to win. They're leading. In the UK, the Conservative Party again is leading by a lot. They're going to smash Rishi Sunak. There's even talk of a draft over there, I heard. Which is not popular, obviously. And I think in other European countries, the right-wing parties are getting a lot more power and influence. So is this all just a coincidence? We're just starting to turn the tide? Well, you can see that some of it might be organic, totally. Some of it might just be conservatives fighting back, but you can see by the behavior of the media, especially, that they're not genuine. The media's not been genuine. And so you have to be very suspicious of all these little victories that the right wing is getting. So this is a paper, this is one of these think tank papers. Is NATO ready for war? And you can see here, resilience, blah blah blah. Above all, NATO allies must find the will to fight. So they know that conservatives don't want to fight. They're very well aware of this. And let's talk about China, because China is the biggest problem. Russia's a problem. Russia's very big. North Korea is a small problem. Iran's a small problem. China is a massive, massive problem. Bigger than even they realize. So they're going to try and turn Taiwan. Let's watch this while I talk about Taiwan. They're going to try and turn Taiwan into Ukraine. They're trying to use Ukraine to hurt Russia. It's not really working. Not yet. But they're going to try and do it with Taiwan. And how they can do that is by Taiwan declaring independence. So in Taiwan, they speak Chinese, they are Chinese, they're genetically almost exactly the same. They're probably slightly more intelligent, they're a little bit more wealthy. I think there was a civil war in China like 70 years ago, and the losers fled to Taiwan. And since then, it hasn't been like reunified. So China is going for this reunification. And it's a big island, it's extremely mountainous. It was going to be extremely difficult to invade. It has all the semiconductor factories, which is like computer chips and stuff. I don't know. So it's a massive economic unit. It would be a huge boost to China to have more control over it. And they're not like officially a different country. They're sort of officially still part of China, but America and the international rules-based order is trying to pull them away. You know, they buy their politicians, they do this political capture, they send these NGOs in, they control the media in Taiwan. Taiwan's becoming more liberal, democratic, blah, blah, blah. And the way that they can provoke China into a war is by getting Taiwan to secede from China officially, or actually even unofficially. Because what happened in Ukraine was that Ukraine wasn't joining NATO because it was too incendiary, but it was de facto joining NATO. They were getting trained by them, they were getting money and all this stuff. And Putin realized that, and he said they're de facto joining NATO and we're going to invade. I'm pretty sure that's how it happened. Because they're not in NATO, they're still not part of NATO, but he invaded anyway. And by the way, they were killing some people on the border of Ukraine and Russia, some people who, so I don't know if they spoke Russian or if they're ethnic Russians, but they were provoking Russia to come and defend these people, and they killed thousands of people there. And that reminds you of what happened with Germany and Poland in World War II, where Germany said that they were killing ethnic Germans, and eventually Germany just invaded Poland. It sounds like a very sneaky liberal tactic where they would do that and then claim on the media that that's just not happening. So I'm going to add a voice edit in here because I forgot to finish my train of thought in the original video. But if Ukraine de facto joined NATO, and then Russia invaded, And then Taiwan can also de facto secede from China, which will almost certainly persuade China to invade. And they can do this by joining international organizations, maybe the UN or whatever, that give them some sort of rights and abilities and choices as a country, even though they're not officially a separate country. That is de facto seceding. And maybe there's even other options as well, but that is a possible scenario where America and the international rules-based order can try and use Taiwan to persuade China to invade, and it's going to be an extremely difficult invasion, but they would be willing to do it anyway. And that, I guess, is what America is hoping for. So China is extremely serious about Taiwan. They're not going to let this go. If Taiwan seceded, it would be like when America declared independence and Britain fought them for it because they didn't want to lose that. It would be a very similar thing. Taiwan's just not going to give it up like that. And they don't need to. But they are aware that America is trying to bait them, provoke them into war. And all the Chinese are very aware of this, and they're very smart, and they are doing everything they can to buy even more time. And still, a peaceful reunification would be much better for them. They don't want to destroy the island with all its factories. It would hurt their economy, it would hurt the global economy. You can really make computers or whatever. But America's pushing this strategy. You can see here, they've got these YouTube channels that are almost certainly propped up and created by the CIA or the Pentagon or whoever. And when I searched US versus China, and this video, where's their video? This one is the first one that comes up, and it's a bit retarded and China loses. And these channels, they're so inorganic, you don't see the person's face ever. The production value is pretty good, and this started like 2 years ago, like probably around when the Ukraine war started, and he's got all these old retarded videos. You know, Russian jets suck, Russian tanks suck, how Ukraine's new overpowered tactic will win the war. Well, it's obviously, that didn't age well. So you got this, starting to get this anti-China propaganda and trying to remoralize Americans, especially American conservatives. Force Design 2030 is a restructuring plan by the Marine Corps to reshape. They're going to become more amphibious and more of a light strike force, and it's designed to prepare the Marine Corps for a naval war against China. So they can do little island hopping and all these little island chains in that first line of defense we saw. There's a bit of a problem. Oh yeah, I just wanted to put this. This is some Jewish guy who's now saying Trump's going to win. Trump now has to assemble a first-class team. It's now all about his cabinet. They basically want probably war hawks around Trump. It's just so, for anyone who's sort of paying attention, it's pretty obvious what's going on. You read between the lines. So this was a paper, very, very recent paper, just like the other one. It's talking about, well, who else would join America in a conflict with China? So it looks at Australia, Canada, Japan, and the UK. These middle countries that America would need to really do some damage to China. Key findings: a low likelihood of active military involvement. So basically these little smaller countries like Australia might say, well, we'll give you some supplies, ammunition, and some intelligence and stuff, but we don't really want to put troops on the ground. Which surprised me in a good way, because I was not so optimistic. And this Scott Morrison was I'm talking about Australia because I'm Australian and because it's pretty relevant, and I know it better than I do Japan. It's pretty relevant for the Taiwan defense. Scott Morrison is talking about this modernized one China framework. He went to Taiwan, provocative speech. The provocative army for blah blah blah, and he said this. This is the old Prime Minister, and he said this when he was not Prime Minister. No place could be more central to the cause of liberty and democracy. Blah blah blah. And then obviously down here you have Dr. Benjamin Herskovich, and he says that the Albanese government, Anthony Albanese is our current Prime Minister, he could be much more ambitious with his Taiwan policies. Basically, and I looked at his Twitter, and basically this is some Jewish liberal guy who wants Australia to help America hurt China, basically. And so, with this strategy, assuming that this woke reversal strategy is real, you would assume that Trump's vice president, they might want to put in someone who can, who that conservatives will like. They probably want a white guy, they probably want a white male, and probably a young male, because the younger they are, they're less likely to be seen as sort of part of the swamp. So my money would probably be on J.D. Vance. I think Doug Burgon's a lot older than him. I don't really know these people very well. This guy says all the right things, but he's a bit too polished. I don't really trust him. I don't really like him. I don't think conservatives are really going to fight for a skinny Indian billionaire. This guy's black, this guy's black, this guy's old. I would just put my money on him. I'm sworn off betting. I don't bet anymore. I'm not going to bet. Although I think betting on Trump is a very good bet. And I will say that I used to be a professional bettor, and I was banned, or I was restricted on this website, Sportsbet, which is Australia's biggest betting site, and I was restricted on Bet365, and I still have the email to prove it. But I'm not a bettor, and I do not condone. I don't think it's good for society to do it at all. And I also want to say that, will Trump really fight China? Will he really go to war with China or Russia or with Iran if Israel invades Lebanon and Iran gets involved? I don't really know. I wouldn't think so, although his cabinet is probably going to want him to do that, and they can't control him like they can control the other politicians, which is why they didn't like him, but he is still vulnerable to some peer pressure. But I wouldn't think that he's going to go for that. He's talking about how Biden's going to get them into World War III, so you wouldn't think Trump's going to go that path. But maybe he doesn't have to. Maybe all he has to do is remoralize the conservatives to get this big new wave of red optimism. America is back. The government is not completely corrupt anymore, blah, blah, blah. And then maybe the guy after him can do that. I don't know. But I'm pretty sure that is the strategy, the woke reversal strategy. Ultimately, it's not going to work. They're not going to defeat China. They're not going to contain China. America and the West has got just way too many problems. They've got problems out the wazoo. America's going to be still a very strong country, but it won't be the most dominant superpower in the world. No matter what happens, really. They would have to do something that the liberals and the Jews are not prepared to do to get that to happen. So it's not going to happen. And that's about all. Thank you, guys.